Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Welcome to another Flashback Friday edition of Across the Fence. As part of our 60th anniversary, we've been going through our archives to share some of the stories and programs that you've enjoyed over the years. Throughout our history, we've aired our monthly Bird Notes program. Our first birding expert was Fran Howe. John Merchant followed Fran, and when John retired, we began partnering with Mark LaBarr of Audubon, Vermont. We've gone back nearly 20 years to find Mark's first appearance on Across the Fence, and what we found was Mark and John Merchant together at the Audubon Nature Center in Huntington.
Thanks first for having us on the show, and we welcome you here to the Nature Center. But I think you can probably fill us in a little bit, John, more about the Nature Center, because you were instrumental in its
Well, I
creation.
guess my memories go back to about the time you were born, Mark.
Yeah.
And I can recall about 30 years ago, sitting right about here with Mrs. Christine Hires of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, of the Hires Root Beer Company. Mm-hmm. She had bought this little hillside farm up here in Vermont as sort of a summer retreat. And she'd reached the point where she wanted to make sure that after she was gone, that it went to some good environmental cause. As she expressed it, she didn't want a lot of little ticky-tacky houses here on the property. And she contacted me because she thought it might be a possibility for a 4-H club camp, which really didn't work out. But it occurred to me that the Green Mountain Audubon Society might be interested in the property, at that time thinking just that it might be a sanctuary where people could come and walk the trails and see the birds and so forth. And a long time afterward, after the property came into the hands of the Audubon Society, I heard a rather interesting story which we refer to as Mrs. Hires' fur coat. It seems that after she was widowed, her father-in-law felt that she should have a nice fur coat, and at Christmas time gave her quite a substantial check. But he never saw the fur coat, and he asked her about it, and she had to confess that she'd bought a little farm up in Vermont as a summer retreat. And that's where the fur coat story comes in. And it has always impressed me that it's a wonderful thing that rather than having one lady wearing a fur coat, we now have this wonderful educational property which is enjoyed by thousands of people in the area. And can you tell us a little bit further?
Well, John, the center does a lot of environmental education programs as well as does a lot of conservation work, both here at the center and up on Lake Champlain with some endangered species. Here at the Nature Center, one of our big conservation efforts is our bird banding station.
The feature of our program today is going to be that station, and in a short time you'll be out there showing us in detail how it operates.
I will. Here we are at the banding station. We've just captured a bird in one of our mist nets, and we'll go through the whole process of banding the bird and talk a little bit about why we band them and show you actually how we apply the band and some of the measurements that we take in order to get some better information about these different birds. Now, the bird that we have caught today, once we take them out of the net where we catch them, we put them in these cloth bags, and it's just kind of like when you were a kid and you pulled the sheet over your head. You can still breathe through it, so the birds are nice and safe and protected. The bird that we've caught in the net right now is one that's probably familiar to most folks, and that's the mighty and ferocious black-capped chickadee, which is one of our resident species here in Vermont. It's a bird that stays with us throughout the winter, and we catch them both in the summer during breeding as well as during the winter months. Some of the stuff that we can learn from black-capped chickadees is by banding them is their survival rates, some of their productivity or reproductive success. And we can also learn a little bit about their winter habits and how they make it through the long Vermont winters. What's interesting about the chickadee is the chickadee, it does make it through those really tough nights that we have. And it's able to lower its body metabolism so that it conserves energy throughout the night. So that's one of the ways it makes it through those 40 below days. And by banding these birds, we can get a better idea of how they do make it through the winter, especially with the winter like this where we've had an ice storm. So what I'll do first is I'll put a band on the bird. Once we've identified the bird, I hold it in two different ways. This is called the bander's grip. And this allows the bird to sit kind of gently in my hand, and it pushes its legs against my fingers, and that keeps the bird in there nice and tight. What I'll do is I'll take a band off of the this one set of bands. Now, since a chickadee is a very small bird, it gets the smallest of our bands. We have different band sizes. The chickadee gets a 0 band, and then we go all the way up to some of our bigger birds, which would be a blue jay, which gets a size 3 band. And these are much bigger birds because birds are different sizes and their legs are different sizes, so they need to have different bands. Now, on this band is a unique number that only this band has. It's kind of like a bird's social security number. And that way, if this bird is ever recaptured, we'll know exactly who it is. It's kind of like their name. And what we'll do is we put the band in our special pliers that are made with little circles in them. We take the chickadee's leg and we gently close the band around it. And basically the band is just like a little bracelet. It moves up and down on the bird's leg. It doesn't interfere with the bird's flight or with its existence. We want to make sure, and we adjust the band so it's on there nice and tight. And this band will be with the bird for the rest of its life. It's nice and light because it's made out of aluminum. And you can see the chickadee, if it was any bigger, my fingers would probably be in trouble. Once we've put the band on the bird, we'll jot that down, and we make sure the band is the correct band by looking at our banding sheet, which lists all the band numbers. This bird's band number, or its official bird name, is 2140-14444. And we'll jot that down in our book. Now, each bird gets its own unique American Ornithologists Union code. And for the black-capped chickadee, it's BCCH, so we record that as well. And one of the first things that we want to do is we want to try to figure out how old this bird is. And there's a couple of ways to do that, but the best way to do that is to kind of look at the bird's skull. And this is a technique called sculling. And basically what we do is we push the feathers back on the top of the skull of the bird, and by doing that, we can see a growth pattern on the skull, and that will tell us how old this bird is. And this bird is actually a young bird. It was a bird that was hatched this summer. So this is the first time, obviously, that we've seen it, and it's its first winter. So the band information that we might get from this bird is pretty crucial to see whether young birds make it through the winter or not, as compared to adults. So we put that down, that this is what we call a 2, or a hatchier bird, a bird that was hatched this year. Once we do that, the next thing we want to do is to try to see if we can determine the sex of this bird. Now, chickadees are notoriously difficult to sex. And the only way that you can really do that is during the summertime by looking at the brood patch, which is on a female, is on the front part of her breast, where she loses feathers in order to sit on her and incubate her eggs. Or on a male, it's called a cloacal protuberance, which is the male sex organ. And unfortunately, since it's fall, we can't really tell how old this bird is, or what sex it is, rather. So we'll put that down in our notes as an unknown sex. Some of the other things that we look at for birds is we take a measurement of their wing using our little wing rule that has a nice stop here. We take the bird and we slide the ruler up underneath its feathers just like that, and we get an idea of how long this bird's wing is. This is 62 millimeters, and we'll record that. for some species, you can actually tell the sex of the bird. For instance, a white-throated sparrow, you can often tell how, what the sex is by the wing length. And the next thing that we do is we'll look and we'll see, since these birds are looking at a tough winter, or a lot of the birds that we catch this time are migrating, we look to see how much fat they have. And we do that by blowing right up here in this part of their body, and usually this is where the fat will develop. Fat's very important for migrating birds because they have to use it to get from place to place. It's kind of like their jet fuel. And it's also very important for some of these small chickadees, especially in the wintertime, and that's why feeding birds in the winter is very important. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to weigh the bird. So what I'll do is I'll bring our scale over here. We use our fancy high-tech weighing equipment. This is my wife's stocking that I've modified. And what's nice about stockings is they stretch so that the birds can fit in there nice and safe. And we clip it on here, and we'll see how much this bird weighs. And this bird weighs about 11.1 grams. And that's about the weight of, just about a quarter. Maybe if you had a quarter or a dime in your hand, that's how much this bird weighs. Just before we release the bird, since this is a chickadee, a lot of our birds do, and since this is a resident bird in and around here at the Nature Center, this bird will return to our nets over the course of the fall, and we will probably catch it one or more 2 times. And then when we band again in the spring, we may also catch it because chickadees are resident birds. When we band in the summer, we catch birds that are breeding, and we'll often catch them several times throughout the summer, and we'll catch them from year to year. And this data is used as part of a nationwide program to estimate, like as I said earlier, survivorship, to see how long these birds live. Now, a lifespan for a chickadee, if it makes it past this first year, will be maybe 4 or 5, if they're really lucky, 6 or 7 years that they'll survive. And so the last thing that we do is when the chickadee's all ready and when we're ready, and he decides to go. And he gives us one little song before he parts.
Thank you, Mark, for sharing with us the operation of the bird banding station. I have another question or two for you. Do you get some unusual birds during the summer in the mist nets?
We do. We have our regular visitors to the nets, the birds that breed and nest here. But every once in a while we do get a real good bird, as we like to call it. This year our best bird was a Wilson's warbler, which is not one that we usually see here during the summer. We caught it right at the beginning of the research season, so that was a real good bird for us.
Do you occasionally get one of the larger birds, say ruffed grouse or a sharp-shinned hawk?
Well, we usually know that we've had a ruffed grouse in the net because there's a big hole left over it. The nets that we use are called mist nets, M-I-S-T, and basically they're very fine mesh nets designed for low light situations, so they work best in the morning. The birds have a tough time seeing them. But because they're very fine, a big bird like a grouse can make a big hole in it and blast right through. But we do get sharp-shinned hawks. They get caught in the net. They don't seem to have as much strength, so that's probably our biggest bird, them and pileated woodpeckers.
Referring back to your little chickadee there, number 444, suppose it doesn't survive the winter and someone finds it. What should he or she do?
This is a real important part of the banding process because all of the data that we collect goes down to Washington, D.C. and is stored in a large computer. So anytime a band is returned or recovered, as we call it, it's great to get that information so we can follow the patterns of the birds. The best way to do that is, well, there's a couple different ways. You can call me here at the Nature Center or one of your local fish and wildlife agencies, and they can report it to the Washington, D.C. lab. Or on each one of the bands says Advise Bird Band, Washington, D.C., USA. So you can actually write to them and take a photocopy of the band, of the open band, with the numbers on it, as well as writing the numbers down and send it down. And they'll send you back what's called a certificate of appreciation, which lets you know all the information about the bird that you found.
Well, we certainly appreciate all this information about banding. Of course, the bird banding is only one of many educational programs offered by the Nature Center. And for more information, you may call 802-434-3068. I'm John Merchant for Bird Notes, and thank you for watching.